Hi, and welcome to the third part in this three-part series on the Revolution in Russia, the rise of the Soviet Union. These are notes 12.3c, and this is, of course, Mr. Marks. If you remember, the Tsar has already been overthrown back in the March Revolution, and a Duma has been has taken control of the government, has tried to draft a constitution. However, the Bolsheviks have been claiming that it's not enough. Lenin doesn't think that just putting it into the hands of more nobles or captains of industry would be good enough. He wanted all of the people to have equal say in what was going on. And as proof that the nobles' ideas weren't working, that this Duma wasn't working, he just pointed out how badly the war was going and the fact that food shortages were still going on, and it looked like another terribly harsh winter was about to start. So in November, and remember the asterisk is because at the time the Russians were still on an outdated calendar that set this revolution in October. And just a side note, if you've ever seen the movie The Hunt for Red October or heard of Tom Clancy's book, Red October it was usually refers to this revolution because in Russia it's still often referred to as the October Revolution. But since we're still on our calendar, that's the one we're talking about. This is for us the November Revolution. This revolution occurs. The Bolsheviks, led by V.I. Lenin, okay, and the troops themselves, led by Trotsky, are going to overthrow the provisional government. They're going to march what's known as their Red Army on the capital. And this revolution is going to start a civil war in Russia that will last for about 4 years. The two sides of this civil war are going to be the Red Army. This is largely composed of armed factory workers who will later be joined by mutinous sailors and deserting soldiers, all of whom had been told to stop these workers from revolting. But eventually, this term of the Red Army will stand for all people who support the Bolsheviks. Now we call them communists, and this is why we still refer to the whole thing as the communist movement. Under Trotsky, this Red Army would become an effective fighting force. And I want to point out a side note. You've noticed the background of these slides this entire time, and you were probably wondering what they were if you did not already know. This is in fact the symbol of the Red Army and eventually of the Soviet Union. What they have there is the hammer, representing the industrial workers that were part of this revolt, the sickle, which represented the agricultural words of the workers of the revolt, and the star, because stars are cool, I guess. All right. Anyway, Red Army's on one side. On the other side was the White Army. Both sides were known this for the colors of flags which they were carrying, and the White Army for its kind of beige uniforms. These were the people who supported the Tsar and the nobles during the civil war that followed the November Revolution. The whites were actually supported by Western democracies, including the United States. The U.S. is a capitalist nation and definitely doesn't want something like communism, that sort of idea, to spread. And for that reason, that fear of communist expansion, Britain and other people that had recently been Russia's allies are going to, well, they were allies of the Tsar. They're going to side with the Tsar in order to try to help him out. Our White Army will continue to fight even after the communists execute the Tsar, his wife, and their 5 children. They're going to continue fighting in his name all the way up until 1921 in a very bloody resistance. Now, I need to kind of go back. That November Revolution, just to remember, the Red Army, once they take control of Moscow, if you remember from our discussions with World War I, that's when having taken over that government, they signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, which makes it so they are no longer fighting against Germany. Well, they are forming this new government, which they will call the the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. We'll often just refer to it as the Soviet Union, but that's why the initials are USSR. Okay, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. This will be officially created after the White Army has been defeated and the communists draft a constitution in 1922. In theory, everyone in the USSR, every citizen, is supposed to have equal access to the means of production and equal protection under the law. But in practice, it's going to turn out that only the members of the Communist Party, those people that part of the Bolshevik movement itself, that people that called themselves the majority but were actually a minority, all of the power is going to rest in their hands, basically because Lenin didn't believe that the people were educated enough to deal with a true democratically run communist system. Real quickly, it's going to become obvious that communism is not going to work with the real world. If you abandon money, you say money just doesn't exist anymore, and you say, well, we'll give everybody everything that they need. The problem is when you need to get stuff from outside your country, you have nothing to trade for it. And so Lenin's going to realize that this pure communism isn't going to work until the whole world kind of turns over to it. So he'll allow small businesses to develop as part of his new economic policy, or NEP. This will end up improving Russia's economy, the Soviet Union's economy rather, and will ease the resistance to the government. Those people that had supported the White Army will start to say, hey, wait a second, things are actually starting to get better under it. Lenin only saw this as a temporary measure until the time when the entire world all of the workers of the world would finally throw off their chains and realize that money just wasn't important anymore. So he saw this only as a temporary step to true communism. But he died in 1924 before he was able to see this entire program through. Lenin's death will end up paving the way for the rise of a new leader for the Soviet Union, a man who's going to take the Soviet Union in a very different direction, and his name will be Joseph Stalin. We'll talk about him in his own presentations. So as a quick review, who led the Bolsheviks in the November Revolution? And how did the November Revolution bring about a civil war in Russia?